forth. I'm the Deputy Executive Director here at KLC, and it's my pleasure this morning to welcome Dr. Anton Reese to speak with us again. He was here in December, I believe. And so for those of you who got to participate in that webinar, you're already familiar with Dr. Reese. But for those who haven't, let me just give you a little bit of background. Dr. Reese is the president and CEO of West Kentucky Community and Technical College. Has right at 30 years in higher education. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but there's something on here, and I didn't talk to Dr. Reese about this beforehand, but I noticed that he was a gold medalist in the triple jump. And I'm going to tell you, I've got a cousin who does that, and I'm always amazed at how difficult, if you're going to pick a tough event, triple jump is a very tough event to do. And so he got a gold medal in the 1982 Hampton Games, and also attended Eastern Kentucky University, got his doctorate at University of Tennessee, has worked at the University of Tennessee for over 13 years, including as Vice Provost of Academic Affairs and Student Success. And one of the things, even just being in this area, you know, from a regional and local level, Dr. Reese has consistently utilized his vision, creativity, and leadership to build partnerships. And these partnerships were, you know, with the focus of, pardon my tongue twisting this morning, but of creating transformative results, you know, including diverse groups, those in the cities, in rural, underserved communities, NAACP, engaging K through 12, other businesses, industry, religious organizations, Chamber of Commerce, all with the focus of coming together to make their community better. And so I really am honored, and Kentucky League of Cities is honored to have Dr. Reese speak with us again. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Reese.
Good morning, Doug, and thank you so much for that introduction. I can still have the triple jump pain from the joints because it does take quite a hit on there as well. Let me ask a quick question. Technically, I got a note about stopping sharing. Is there anything there that I need to do, LaDonna?
I think you're sharing. We see your screen.
You good?
Yeah, you're good, sir.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. Thanks again, Doug. As always, Eleanor, great to connect with you. And also Martha, I believe I see has joined us as well. And then LaDonna, certainly in the technical realm. And to all of you, let me just say good morning. I'm always, appreciative and thankful for opportunities to engage, in conversations that, when all is said and done, it advances, moves the work that we do in our own respective roles and missions and visions and those sort of things. My presentations do continue to be sponsored by Diet Mountain Dew. Get the kick before the calories. I'm a two-career guy. My first career was in broadcasting news, and over the years, people would say, well, why did you leave the industry? And I said, well, technically in broadcasting, the hours are long, the pay is terrible, it's a very superficial business, a lot of politics. Then I came to higher education, got involved in higher ed administration, and well, the pay is terrible, the hours are long. In some ways, it could be a superficial business. So I say transferable skills, right, with leadership. So over this hour, I do want to talk, though, through this prism, if you will, of teamwork versus themework that really ties very heavily back to leadership. As Doug mentioned, I have the ongoing privilege of serving as president of my college. Got about just about 475 employees located in 5 different locations. And some of our satellite campuses, Mayfield Graves, probably about 30 minutes away. So a lot of people to get moving in the same direction to fulfill the mission and goals of what we do. And I'm sure for all of you respectively, you know that it is challenging, really leading and managing teams on a daily basis, right? One issue could, like the pebble in the pond, can magnify and really disrupt, at the end of the day, the level of success and impact that we have in terms of what we do. So I use that really as a backdrop to submit to you again that if anyone tells you that they have mastered the art of managing and leading people, again, if they're heading east, you go as far west as fast as you can. That includes Maxwell, by the way. You know, he has his laws, and he's probably one of the most revered, but I'm sure he would also admit he's good at it, but mastering it, that's a different story. Here's format-wise how I want to maximize this hour and to make it as engaging as I can. So the first half, I really want to hear a little bit from you in terms of your leadership style, the pluses and minuses, right? How you assess yourself, and then likewise, how do you think those who report to you would likewise do the same to see if those things match up. A little bit about communication style. I think that's very, very important. And then certainly we will get into the deeper dive of where, as it pertains to teams, right? The role that we have as leaders, our level of emotional intelligence, understanding the basis and the nature of conflict and critique. And then closing really then with teamwork versus themework. I'm going to thread Patrick Lencioni has a good book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, that I utilize regularly, certainly with teams I've worked with. And then my thoughts in terms of 5 characteristics of high-performing teams, and certainly leave some room at the end for any sort of questions. And certainly questions along the way are welcome for sure. Is that good? So I'm going to attempt first. Now, when I look at my screen, I think I'm seeing like 6 people at a time, so I can only, I guess I'll pull and scroll. That's what it is. I'll scroll across. Yes. All right. So here is your first activity that I would like you to do. Let's talk a little bit about your leadership style. And I just want to give you a minute or two for you to think about your leadership style, right? And as I like to say, no wrong or right answers. This is your style. And just identify maybe 2 pluses and 1 minus with your leadership style. And I know it may be hard for you to find a minus, but dig deep this morning, all right? Yeah, give me 2 things. Pluses with your leadership style, a minus with your leadership style, and likewise, how those who report to you, how would they describe a plus and a minus? If you could do that for just a couple of minutes. I got my timer on here. Then I'll call on a couple to get the discussion rolling here. So again, your leadership style, give me 2 pluses, 1 minus from your own self-assessment, and then how others would define your style. All right, 2-parter. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions on that. I'll give you a quick 5 minutes, and the clicker is on. All right, give 2 more minutes. You know. All right. So let me pick on the some of the senior leaders first. This should be fun, especially if you have some of your employees in this. Doug, let me return the favor by way of introducing me. How about starting with the Deputy Director, Doug?
Oh,
Take a stab at it. What do you think?
well, I'll probably get some eye rolls from some of the staff watching this today, especially I like to think that my leadership style is to lead by example. I won't ask employees to do anything that I wouldn't do. Now, a lot of those have areas of expertise within our organization that I don't have any expertise in. And so often in that case, it's a little hard to lead, for that to lead by example, but I'd like to think some pluses that am able to empower staff to do their jobs, not looking over somebody's shoulder constantly. I think probably a little bit of the minus though is that sometimes I don't like to delegate. If there's something I'm really interested in, I mean, I may try to help Martha manage HR or something like that. And she likes to push me out. But if there's something I really am passionate about, I may not want to delegate. And that really curbs the opportunity for others on the team to develop in those areas, because it's something that it's like, hey, this is my go-to area. I'm going to do that. And so hopefully that helps a little bit.
So how do you think it compares with how those that report to you, how would they describe your leadership style? Plus and minus.
Well, I'd like to think that they agree with me because I'm always right. But I'm probably wrong in a lot of these accounts. I'm going to say Amy's on this call. I'm going to call Amy out, but Amy, our Chief Financial Officer, she still reports to me, at least for a couple of months before I retire. So
congratulations.
Yeah.
And I would agree with Doug, although I don't know if he's always right, but 98% of the time, I would say he's right.
Excellent. Well, Amy, know that you've tagged in. You're in leadership. Give us a sense of your pluses, minuses with your leadership style and how it compares.
Yes, I try to, I'm a lot, I think, similar to Doug. He did train me. He is my mentor. I try to empower my employees. To me, actions speak louder than words. I try to empower them to work independently, make their own decisions. Minuses with that, I'm not good at micromanaging someone. That's not my style. And then, delegation, that's hard for me too. So exactly what Doug said.
Why do you think it is hard to delegate, as Doug mentioned?
I don't know if it's accounting and the way our mind is maybe wired, or if it's our leadership style. I'm not sure.
Well, a school of thought too, and I'll pull Doug in back for a second. I think sometimes one of the issues with delegation, depending on who you can delegate it to, and that you have confidence in right? Because sometimes there's scenarios where you go, well, probably be easier for me just to do it myself because you know your style, right? And I could count on myself, that type thing. Could be a measure of that. What do you think, Doug?
Well, I think there's an element of trust. And it's like, hey, I've got confidence. I know how to do this. And I think there's a lot of people that have that. Sometimes it takes longer to invest in someone else and giving them a chance sometimes and saying, hey, they may not do it exactly the same way that I would do it, or even do it as well. But you know what? If I look back, whenever I first did a lot of things, I didn't do them nearly as well as I probably do them now. So I would say that right there is probably at the core of it.
Yeah, yeah, good, great points. Let me do one more, Martha, and then I'm going to go to the wider group here. Martha, two pluses, minus, and how does it compare?
I would think my leadership style is more along the intuitive style, which you know, I lead a lot from my heart, and that's good sometimes, and then it can be bad sometimes because it makes tough decisions very hard sometimes. And but in my role, I we're in the service industry, so I like to lead by servant leadership too. That can be good and that can be bad. I mean, there's plus and minuses of both things because a lot of times I'm very hands off in micromanagement. I do not micromanage well, and you know, we are all professionals. I expect my expectations are that, you know, this is your job. You do it how you do it, and do it to the best of your ability. If you need me, I'm here. Now, that might be viewed sometimes as very non-caring or hands-off, you know, that I'm not committed to the employee, but I am. And I just expect that because that's the best way they can grow, is my feeling.
And how do you think those you supervise, will they assess your style in the same way? Pluses, minuses?
Some may not. Let's see who's on here that reports to me. Eleanor doesn't report to me. She works with me very closely. Elizabeth's on here. She reports to me directly.
Okay.
So we can see what she thinks.
If they're bold enough to change the world.
No, she's very honest with me, so she will tell me if I'm wrong.
Is that Eleanor or Elizabeth or both?
Both of them will. They're both very strong, honest women, and that's what I respect.
All right. Okay. I won't put anyone on the spot here, but Elizabeth,
Well,
what do you think?
You want to go first, Elle?
I was just thinking the same thing. Martha definitely is that hands-off leader. She doesn't micromanage, and we do appreciate that. She trusts. Some people will, you have to prove to, but she just seems to trust you automatically unless you give her reason not to. So I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I remember when I started, Martha said, I'm going to trust you unless you give me a reason not to. And I think it's been that way. And if I need her, she's there. And if not, she lets me, you know, figure things out and do what I need to do. But she's there if we need her.
Got it. Would love to hear it off somebody from the cities. I see Donna Angel just took a sip of water. She's ready. Donna, City of Berea.
I don't think I can out-talk all of them. They are top notch all the way. Thank you, Dr. Reese. I appreciate it. I would classify myself as a unique person. I am more of an achiever-driven leader, and that does not often sit well with everyone. I do not like to micromanage. I like to hire talent and skill, and here's what you do, show me what you can do, and roll on with it. I'll go back to Mr. Goforth there. Putting faith and confidence in everyone else is difficult for me to do until I can see you can do it. But once I have seen that, I'm not going to micromanage you or work with you in that area because I believed in you when I hired you with the skills you told me about. So do your thing, I think the minuses that I'm going through, as many probably are across the state, is with our millennials and our Gen Zs that have not grown up with the work ethics, morals that I'll speak for myself, that I have grown up with in past years, where that plays such a vital role in establishing yourself in a community of influence and respect. And I think that is where we're missing a lot today, because I can't find the workers that really want to commit to the extra steps to being a better person in a community and not just hoarding their talents within themselves. So I think my minuses are that, but I think my pluses are that I don't have that many millennials and Zs to work with, but I find them a challenge all the time. But with the additional members that I have, I think they're super wonderful. They're very understanding. They are all about watching me, following me. They love that I care passionately about them growing themselves to be something bigger than better than they are. And I pride myself on being able to be a great mentor to any employee that I have within the city itself. So
Excellent, excellent.
that's a handful, I know.
That's good. And I'm tempted to call on some millennials now for a response. How about Pikeville? Robbie Bentley? As we said, Robbie, are you there? All right, let's get Robbie. Aaron Sparkman, City of Paris, are you there?
I'm here if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. What do you think? Your leadership style, pluses, minuses?
Fairly new to leadership as far as this position is concerned. I'm a superintendent over a electric distribution for the city of Paris, and grew up within the ranks, being guys. So I've struggled with separation, be hands-on, very involved, and now as a supervisor, be more hands-off. Change. I had to operate. I had to grow into a leadership of similar to what I used to lead by example as a foreman, but similar to what Martha was saying, being a servant leader, being available to the guys if they need if they need anything, trying to be hands off. Struggle for me to not want to get back in and get my hands in to the projects once I've assigned something, because I'm so used to doing it myself. So I'd say the guys would probably comment back. Some of the minuses are I tend to remain involved, maybe a little too much, where I've been so used to doing it myself and leading myself and showing how to do it myself. So staying hands off is a struggle.
All right. Thank you there. The audio was a little in and out, but I think we got most of that. Thank you all so much. I'm looking at the clock because time is racing on. So I'm going to shift to the next component of this, which to me then is about communication and communication style, right? A very close parallel. But I think it is important as we take this journey towards, leading and managing teamwork and great teams, communication is a very important sort of element in it. Let me just call on a couple of folk to take a stab at this one. I see my good friend there, Sarah Stoll. Good morning. Tell us, from your perspective, just give me 1 plus, 1 minus with your communication style.
Hi, Dr. Reese. Good to see you virtually this morning.
Yeah.
I think for me, with my background, having worked with the military community for about 15 years, I learned to be very short and straight to the point. And so I'm kind of, that's good and bad. And I think now coming out of that arena, trying to work on not being so straight to the point, direct, if that makes sense. More as I guess, soft maybe in my tone. So that's kind of a challenge for me right now. So, and I can also be a talker. So what some people do are able to say in just a couple of sentences, I just like to keep rambling sometimes personally. So
a storyteller.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. How about Michelle Martina?
Yeah, DiMartina.
Yeah. Communication style.
I'm not a confrontation person. That makes me nervous. I work with my therapist on it. But I like a more collaborative communication. I'm not one to say this is what has to happen and here's what I think. I'm more of a here's what I'm seeing, let's talk about it style of person. Very much concerned with hearing the other point of view as well. So I think more collaborative.
And any minuses?
Well, sometimes collaboration isn't helpful. If you need to take a really strong stance and that can give me some hesitation and pause when it comes to having to speak with somebody on something I know they don't want to hear, and that maybe is not really a conversation but just more of a something that needs to be said that is harder for me and takes a little pep talk with myself.
I like it a lot. So let me thank everyone, first of all, on the front end in terms of, the willingness to contribute and the associated vulnerability. You'll be hearing a little bit more about that when I get to the Patrick Lencioni portion, if you will, of this presentation. When I think through my leadership style, there's an acronym that I use because I believe that when it comes to moving teams to excellence, leadership counts. So it counts, COUNTS, is an acronym, right? So the leadership counts for me is the C. To me, when all is said and done, if you get nothing else out of this presentation this morning, outside of the complexity of managing people, the C is for communication. I believe that communication is the glue and the fuel that makes or breaks teams. If there's a breakdown in communication, however defined, whether it's miscommunication, I'm a big emphasis, and I think I got it on some future slides about the importance of timely communication. But communication is really, really central to the success, I think, of leading teams. I think depending on the structure of your organization, particularly those that are multi-layered, there's always a challenge that what is communicated at the top, right? And there's different activities that bear this out, that as it works its way throughout the organization, where you start off with it initially, by the time it gets down to the rank and file, it becomes the combination of rumor, conspiracy theories. And I'm sure that you've had some of those. And for those in senior leadership, I bet that there are moments when you go back and go, well, it's right here. Here's the email, word for word. We mentioned this, it's in the minutes, right? But still, communication is a very elusive piece. The communication layers also is between supervisors and those that they've been entrusted to lead, right, as well. Some scenarios in some organizations, certainly not yours, is that oftentimes you may hear decisions being made that impacts your respective unit, but you probably get it maybe second or third hand, right? And that creates potential conflict via communication between leaders and those respective individuals that they serve. I believe that some additional factors, barriers for leaders that impacts how well they lead. Dr. Miles Monroe has a saying that the ultimate test of leadership is the ability to handle criticism. And few of us do, right? I think that the way that criticism, the way it's communicated, obviously the content of it is tough. And I've seen some of the great ones who've buckled under criticism. You know, certainly I think as part of leadership and evolution and experience, I believe that it is important to figure ways in which you can, in many ways, almost embrace criticism and rechannel it, right, as needed. Because, you know, quite frankly, you know, I think some ways it's a misnomer that if there's critique, that it has to be not true. Sometimes the critique could be very valid, right? And I guess back then to how timely, right, we even acknowledge it, communicate it back out, and for it to be resolved as well. So handling criticism, I believe, is a very important piece. Let me roll into team player versus theme player. When I started in 2016, this was my leadership team. About a quarter of the group were at this college 25 years or more, as youthful as they look, right? In 8 years, what they call it, the before and after. This is portraits of my new team. I have about 4 or 5 vacancies right now to fill. And there's a lot more millennials. I would also go back to the original comment as part of this team as well. My point in starting with these visuals are that teams do evolve and change over time. So here's a visual that I've come up with. So when I think visually, because I'm a visual learner, about teamwork versus theme work. So let this be for those city hall, county, right, those sort of areas. When you look at the visual, I want to pick on Donna because she has that city experience. So Donna, as you look at my visual of teamwork, what stands out to you in this visual? You may be muted, Donna.
Sorry. The biggest piece in the center, City Hall, County, the big picture.
Very good. Focus is there. And what about these bubbles? What do these represent?
These are all the connecting pieces of the vines that I work with each and every day.
Well, Donna, which is the most important one of these bubbles here?
All of them.
Good answer. I'm sure those in these areas appreciate that response. All right. So teamwork, visual versus theme work. Talk to me, Donna. What has happened here?
We've consolidated down some areas that were not included anymore.
Right. Anybody else see something? Jump in, jump in. By the comparison, first moment.
I see some arrows coming from the center part out to the different departments. So it's almost like instead of all the support coming into the center is supporting outward.
Nice.
And the center is not as large as the first one.
Yeah, right. So for me, when we talk about teamwork versus theme work, what I've noted over time is that it gets away pretty fast where that primary focus starts out, and it becomes more than about we use words like siloism, right? And there's a competitive nature, right? Some would argue with different units. right? Getting funding from the city and or the county, and who makes those decisions and all associated with it. But I use this visual first to get a picture visually about teamwork versus theme work. And I want to drill down into that a little bit more. So Patrick Lencioni, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, does a really good job, as I mentioned, I believe, in really unpacking some of the elements of what creates this theme work, this dysfunction, if you will, within teams, where it shifts from where the primary focus is and becomes more about the individual or the individual unit. So Lencioni talks about first about the absence of trust. And he uses interesting terminology about predictive versus vulnerability. But let me hover on trust first before I unpack what I've gleaned, at least from his predictive versus vulnerability. So I have used Stephen Covey's Speed of Trust. He has a whole resource kit, right, around trust. And again, the changing nature of teams, as individuals join teams, as individuals leave teams, what to me is a frightening reality is, I think probably first and foremost, how fragile trust is. Even with great teams, trust is fragile. One individual exiting or entering can have an impact on trust, one. Two, particularly if the leader of that particular entity changes, boy, in some ways, it's almost like starting over, right? Depending on the nature of some sort of teams. You know, in my line of work, we rely very heavily on our partners, from hospitals, K through 12. There was a superintendent on the call, and they would attest that as personnel changes, you pretty much got to almost get back to work, right, in engaging who the new leadership is. But trust is a tough one. There's movies made and songs written about the breach of trust, the lack of trust. And trust at its core is a tough one because it takes time to build trust. But very quickly, again, you can erode it. Lencioni's angle is that what he finds with teams is that if you're operating with predictive trust, right? We work together, we kind of know each other's rhythms, right? Styles, right? The pluses, the minuses, those sort of things. You can pretty much operate in that sphere, right? With predictive trust. Lencioni argues, though, that that predictive trust works well to the extent that the rules of engagement remain in place, because I would argue that you could work with somebody for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and never really know them. And all it takes is a wrong day, wrong time, wrong situation. And what you thought you had maybe was never there in the first place. And so he argues that vulnerability trust is more sustaining. And that is the leader. Just as we started this exercise off, you know, with Doug and Martha and the leaders, you know, just that willingness to be vulnerable, right, to those that they serve is huge, because in many ways it sets a rule of engagement. It sets a spoken unspoken, you know, within the team, that if as a leader you are willing to be vulnerable, I believe it helps team members to also be vulnerable. I believe that Doug had mentioned, you know, that there's certain things that he is just not good at. I've been around for a minute, and there's some leaders who are great at everything, certainly in their minds, right? And have no vulnerabilities that they'll articulate. So the absence of trust, predictive versus vulnerability trust, is one of the areas that Lencioni hits pretty hard. Second, he talks about the fear of conflict, which is another tough one. Spoiler alert, conflict is inevitable. It will happen. Not might happen, it will happen. And it doesn't always come from a nefarious place, right? I think just the nature and the complexities of where people are at any given moment in time there's just a lot of moving parts that contribute to this kind of sense of conflict. I also believe that part of the source of conflict, and this goes from, again, from the leadership style and dynamic. I heard the word used almost consistently about having a collaborative sort of leadership, right? Which there's tremendous pluses with it, if you can maintain it, right? Because, you know, if I ask Mitzi Shively to do a task, and at the unit division meeting, I said, I just want to thank Mitzi. I even have a certificate of appreciation, right? The adulation is there for doing this particular task. Amanda Williams comes and does the same task. I never really say a word. That could be a source of conflict, right? Because Amanda said, well, wait a minute. Where's the shared love and collaboration and levels of support? But fear of conflict creates, in some ways, which is a little further down, this whole idea about avoidance, right? People try to avoid conflict. One of the earlier speakers had mentioned about that really isn't their thing. I'm not sure it's anyone's thing, but conflict is inevitable. And I believe that we have to continue to find ways to address this fear of conflict when it comes to leading teams to produce great teamwork. The third one, he talks about the lack of commitment among the team. He has a good saying there: if members of your team don't weigh in, they will not buy in to what it is that you're doing. And that's actually consistent to a collaborative sort of leadership. The dynamics oftentimes that I've seen in teams, you assemble a team and there are strong players on the teams, and they're not as strong players on the teams. And the lack of attentiveness to balancing that out, however defined, could create some issues in terms of people weighing in. Sometimes people don't weigh in because the level of expertise may not be there, right? I may lend to another member of the team. Depending on the nature of the task, some individuals, bring more depth to it, but they can't achieve whatever the ultimate goal is alone. So they have to rely on the team. And as many have mentioned, there's always this dance with micromanaging, right? Whether it's a task in general and or a leading. So commitment and getting that buy-in in many ways is a time-honored sport. I submit that if you give me a good day to follow most teams around, from the leadership lens, I look very closely to see how much time you really spend with your team to get that buy-in, to get that collaboration, to really get that sense of commitment and what that looks like. But it is important that you create a process where individuals could feel as valued members of the team, irrespective of their roles, and giving them time, however defined, and we know that time is a very fleeting thing, for them to be able to feel part of what is there. Manconi argues that the 5, his big one is 4, which is the avoidance of accountability. And that's a real interesting one. There's a case study activity that I would do where I would say, so what do you do when you have an employee who is bottom line not meeting the mark, not producing, not productive? Wait for it. But they're very popular and well-loved. What do you do with that one? Do you hold them accountable? Or are you weighing, if you do, the potential impact that they can have? As I said, one individual could do some interesting dynamics within the organization as a whole, either way. The avoidance of accountability. Some individuals have been around for quite some time that, from a leadership perspective, you may inherit. You didn't hire them, but you inherited them. And you go into whatever version that you use, for example, with evaluations. I see this all the time. And you pull up that record of that individual from prior supervisors. And, I don't know what the skills are that you use for evaluation, but it would say, EE for us is the highest, right? Exceptional. And the documented evaluation for those out there in HR, oh, this is an exceptional employee all the way through. You come in then as a new leader style and hold them accountable. Wow, that is going to be a dance, right? And really then some. I think at the end of the day, the consistency of holding team members accountable for their respective tasks and duties is a major part, obviously, of what we do from a leadership perspective, but it is tough. You know, there's this whole piece where we talk about emotional intelligence and what makes us tick, right, as leaders, right? We aren't machines. There are certain personalities that just don't jive. I don't know about you, but have you ever met someone, maybe for 30 seconds, haven't really exchanged much information, but there's something there that just doesn't work. And then lo and behold, no, they're on your team, right? So sometimes our own personal filters may get in the way too, in terms of how much we engage or not. And that impacts accountability as well. And then the fifth one is inattention to results. And this is where that Themework piece really comes into play. This is where individuals, right, and or their units, oftentimes fueled by ego, maybe the seeking recognition, but bottom line, they see themselves and what they do as bigger than the team, right? And that takes some managing. I would also add that the tough one on this one as well too is, what do you do when you have an individual or a couple of individuals who are really, really good at what they do? Let me emphasize that again. Really, really good at what they do, but they alienate everybody because it's this super ego. It's about them at all costs and or their unit at all costs. And then they become passive aggressive, right, when it comes to getting the bottom line sort of results. So Lencioni offers these 5 factors that he believes and C labels the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So let me wrap up with mine. I believe these are my 5 thoughts. I have no science to prove it, but this is just from my observation and my experience with the qualities of high functioning teams. I think for a high functioning team, it is important that old adage of when we say leaving ego at the door, of course we are driven, right, for success. We're driven for results. I mean, there's a drive, don't get me wrong. But if that drive, to my earlier comment, basically overshadows and overpowers everyone else associated with the team, that is going to impact, I believe, the level. You may get some results, but talking about excellence is that zenith level, right? Things are really clicking out of next level. You're doing transformative things, right? Exceeding profit margins and those sort of things. I think one is important for leaders because it starts at the top to check the ego at the door. Second, you know, as I mentioned very early in, timely communication. Communication is a fleeting sport. There's an activity that goes pretty much what you say. First of all, with communication is not what always people hear, right? And then communication, in many ways, if it isn't multimodal, that creates issues. Some of us are talkers, right? And so we may talk through an expectation or talk through an assignment. The individual receiving that in that moment, it may make all the sense in the world, and you know, they may even say, got it. You fast forward a couple hours later or a couple of days later, it is as though the conversation never really occurred, right? And so the idea that as part of that communication, when I say multimodal, that combination of verbal, written, the reminders, right, the reiteration, and as importantly though, that it is done in a timely fashion. And you got to figure out what timely means, because juggling all of the various tasks of the day oftentimes leaves very little time, right? So part of that discipline then is, I like to block out a couple hours early in the morning to knock out a lot of my email responses, get the assignments for the days, and get those out, because once my day gets started, right, it is nonstop, and right, it may not be towards the end of the day before he could respond in many ways to various things. I think third is certainly tied in with communication, the clarity of expectations, and what the inevitable goal is. When I was in the University of Kentucky leadership class, I remember then Chancellor Colonel Ben Carr said to us as rookies, he says, no right or wrong answers. How many times do you think you need to repeat a goal, a vision as a leader before people really get it, receive it? How many say once? That was like 60% of the group. How many say twice? That was like the majority of the group. Ben Carr says, try 7 times. And I remember as a rookie saying, 7 times? Who in the world has the time and energy to do that? I would tell you over time, yeah, it takes reiteration. And you know, depending on how you're wired, it may seem almost ad nauseum, but it does take multiple times, I believe, for the team as a whole, sometimes to really get the clarity of expectations of the goal. The fourth one, I think it is important. Some people receive it differently, right? So when they say cross training, I've also lost enough sleep over individuals who have been around and very excellent at what they do. And when they exit, the hole is so deep. And literally, within their team, in the absence of cross training, you really got maybe one individual that has all the expertise. I believe it is important that we may not have to master, obviously, depending on what the skill set or the expertise is, but the idea of having certainly more than one person cross-trained. So if for some reason that person is out, it could be an extended illness, by the way, right? That type thing. So being able to come in, right, and really keep things really rolling is important. And I think you can achieve that through cross-training. And then I think last, I believe that high-functioning teams, there's a high measure of consistency around this idea of exceeding with excellence in the execution, task, duty, or goals that they do. One of the activities that I've done with all of my leadership teams that I've come in to I'll lead, I asked them a basic question. How would you assess us as an organization? No wrong or right answers, just want to kind of get a take. And inevitably, and I would say, would you say that we are poor, fair, good, or excellent at what we do? 99.99999% of groups always land where, you think? What do you think?
Good.
Poor, fair, good, or excellent?
Good.
Excellent.
So the majority actually say excellent, right? They say how you phrase the question determines the answer. So I say, well, tell me more about that. What is that based on? And so they'll give me that kind of glazed look. And I would say, for example, in our sport in higher ed, I would say, okay, so we've rated us as excellent. How would students rate us as an organization? Good, fair, poor, excellent. And almost like magic, the group would start to shift to hopefully good, but it depends on who you talk to, right? Because those who are experiencing the services that we are providing, they may got a whole different angle on it. So I ask questions like, I wonder about, for example, the adult student generalizing who's been away, say, for 10 years or more, who's built up the courage to come back to our campus, comes through the door, gets right at the front door for admissions, and turn around and leave and never step foot in. How do you reach that one? That's gonna be tough. How about that adult student then that musters the courage up, goes into the front desk, signs up, finally coming back to school, then classes start on the first day of class, then meet that inevitable professor that kind of reminds them why they're not college material or not college ready. Who's measuring that one, right? How about this student that comes in through the front door, gets a world-class experience in the classroom, but then goes to get help with advising or tutoring, and it's a terrible experience, and that student inevitably leaves. My point is that the complexity of organizations even evaluating itself, and now moniker excellence, it's a lot of moving parts, and to have everyone, irrespective of what they do, to be leaning in and clicked in under this moniker excellence that has to be continuously defined and reiterated, that's a tough part of leadership, but I believe it is a necessary part and a necessary ingredient and quality of highly effective teams. And with that, I would stop in these last couple of minutes to see feedback, questions, thoughts, clarifications, disagreements. I was going to come out of my screen here. Okay.
Dr. Reese?
Yes.
Donna here. I have a question, comment maybe, not question.
Yeah.
Teamwork versus themework. I think so much has changed during our times coming out of COVID into a whole new world, I say today, that I don't find, I'm speaking strictly for myself as a director for the city and managing 2 departments. But I see that it's very difficult today to manage a group as a team. To lead them, I find it more that I lead each individual one by trying to work with all of them on teaching each other their individualization of characteristic traits that they have, and teaching them how to work together that way without using the word team. So themework, of course, is a lot of what we do in a city for different events that go on here and projects that we're always building, tearing down, or doing again. And I think it's really a time of change that we all need to have more direction on how to bond our groups together in a way that they're more supportive of each other and less focused on their own self, and building themselves in a manner of that way of earning respect and caring about earning that respect to take it to a higher level of where they are today. So that's one thing I'll throw on your plate to work on in the future for all of us out here that have those kind of challenges, because I think it is becoming a bigger issue across the state of Kentucky, not just in one little city somewhere. So just my comment.
Is a great, fantastic, timely comment, and certainly that marker with all things COVID. When all is said and done, there's certainly some dynamics that change there. I think in terms of how people oriented themselves and their level of commitment through assessment, maybe as to what's priority, what is not. Certainly there's been ongoing, I know we had a meeting last week about this, the whole issue with remote work, right? And the sort of impact, depending on the extent of how that is utilized, the sort of impact that has on the team, as a couple of examples there. I think certainly third that, whether it's a combination of just change and you put in all the generational factors, et cetera, certainly there was a time where people saw pretty much like, a 1-2 job type thing where you could be there for like 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Right now you're getting people so much more transient. And so on a good day, our average right now is about 3 to 5 years, right? With new hires, keeping them in, and then depending on the position, that could be ongoing transition. So my last piece of saying that too, though, is to your point, I think though that part of what I have tried to push here at the college more and more as well, is the combination of, when I say supervisor, managerial, training, these sort of things, looking at our processes, starting with something as fundamental, basic, but important. And for me, under the premise that one individual could change a whole team. How we onboard people into teams is also important. And oftentimes there's an inconsistent way that people come on board. And some come in with very disparate expectations of the task at hand, right? And how they either fit in or not, right? And then depending on, the culture of the unit or the culture of the place, it's kind of almost like a rites of passage, right? Regardless of how skilled you are, et cetera, hey, you got to kind of pay some homage, right? And that creates I believe also some impacts too, right, in terms of managing leading teams. But great comment.
Thank you for sharing.
Maybe time for two more questions.
I have a quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my camera's not on, but I'm wondering how you recommend getting feedback if, you think you're doing everything right, but maybe your staff thinks you're not. How do you get feedback? That's
Yeah,
honest.
and that's a quick answer on that one. If you talk to Mike, those who reported to me, they will tell you that among, I'm sure, several minuses is my evaluation process, which they've told me is just different. And here's what I mean. The typical evaluation process, by way of also getting feedback and providing feedback, is where basically the supervisor sits down with who you report to. Here's my assessment of you. Maybe on a good day, what do you think? And then we do a score, Likert scale, and we move on. So I create my own internal document that I use more so like as a executive coaching type thing. And I try to get 3 sources of feedback. So if they're on the cabinet level, I get cabinet peers anonymously to evaluate each other. Those who they report to provide another measure of input and feedback. And then I do my own assessment. And so when I compile general themes of feedback both ways, I start first with my assessment because I worry if I read what everyone else is saying is going to bias or color my assessment, right? So I do my assessment first. And then I sit back and see where things align, right? Because, you only spend a certain amount of time with your reports, right? In the good way, so you don't micromanage, right? And so there are always themes that also come up that I'm not aware of. So when I provide feedback or feedback, because obviously the campus in general gets to evaluate me, we provide then a more comprehensive set of feedback by way of assessment.
Oh, wow. A lot of information, a lot of great information shared today. We need more than an hour. But again, thank you, Dr. Reese,
Yeah, thank
for
you all.
imparting some great knowledge to us. And stay tuned. We'll see Dr. Reese around KLC some more, kind of helping us as we continue to build a community of inclusion where everyone feels welcome and belonged. And Donna, I understand what you're saying about the generational gap. We're definitely going to be talking more about that and how we can work as a team to make things great. Yeah, continue to make our cities great and the work that we do. So again, thank you everyone for being here today, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you, Dr. Reese.
All right, thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. You
Thanks,
too.
Dr. Reese.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.